Hey y'all, it's Brandon with Voodoo Force. Now we're going to make a pot rack or utility rack, and I'm going to use some kind of unusual material for that today. I'm going to use some Schedule 40 pipe and flatten it out. So hopefully you can get some ideas from this and take it in your own directions. But let's get started on it. So this is our starting material. We've got about 54 inches of 1/2 inch ID Schedule 40. That is pipe for those of you who don't know. And I got six pieces of 8 inch long, 1/4 inch round stock. All of this came out of the scrap, so it's all a little rusty, but that won't matter for long. First thing we got to do is flatten out this Schedule 40. So let's get it in the fork. That ought to be good just for flattening it. Now this is not a super complicated process. I'm literally just flattening the pipe. Now what this does is it gives us a weird shape that I don't know of another way to get it, but I love this shape. See that kind of dished in shape. Now we want to make sure that we're hammering it the same way every time. As you're doing this, come back and kind of keep it flat, because it'll want to curve and twist on you. And then you'll have to deal with that later. So just deal with it as you go. Okay, with tubing of any kind, if you go to quench it, you're going to boil the water, and a lot of times it will come through the tubing and shoot out the end you're holding onto. So if you're going to quench it, make sure you put a wad of rag down in there, or hold it with a pair of tongs so it's angled away from you and all living creatures. Just keep that in mind. If you're quenching something, tubing, boiling water is going to come shooting out of it like some kind of cursed blowhole. So, safety tip. Now back to it from the other end. Okay, now we'll lean this over here and let the whole thing cool off. While our main piece is cooling off, we're going to make the hooks for our rack. And while this is only 6 pieces of material, that's going to be 12 hooks. And there's going to be a hook on each side. What we're doing here is bringing this down to a dull point. So we're not making it sharp, and we're not doing anything really decorative. We're just tapering it down a little and then rounding it. Let's put a little more heat on there. I'm just going to hit the corners on here and just kind of make a dull point. That's about all we're doing. We're going to take about 1.5 inches hanging over the edge of the anvil, tap it down, and and bring it back. We're making a very abrupt hook there. So it doesn't have a lot rounded in it. It's just pretty abrupt. And then we'll do the same thing on this end, but the hook will be coming back towards this hook. Okay, same thing, gonna point it. Round that point a little bit. Remember, dull point, not making a needle. Yeah, we're about the same. We got off kilter a little, but we can fix it. We're left with that right there. So both hooks are going the same direction. Now we're going to take it, heat it roughly in the middle, grab it, and bend it around. Depending on how artsy you want to do it, depends on what you bend it around. But basically, you're just looking for something like that. So we'll be able to drop this over the rail on our utility rack and have a hook on either side. Let's make it where it go right ½ inch. There we go. We just got to do this a couple more times, but we'll be good. Alright, we got those 6 done. That's fairly straight. I got 54.5, so let's cut it at 36. And then we'll work our 2 pieces into our rack. Now the next thing I want to do is kind of forge a decorative end on each end of the long piece, one end of the short piece, and then just flatten the other end of the short piece. So we'll get on that. Now, of course, you can do this as complicated as you want. All I try to do is flare it out a little bit and then take my cross piece and put some grooves in there. And that's it. That's what I do for the kind of decorative end. When I flatten out the one end of the short piece, that's all I do. That's all it takes. It just thins that out and flattens it so there's no real texture there. Now at this point, once again, I'm going to let this cool off. I'm going to drill some holes in it and then we'll get back to forging. I'm going to drill some holes real quick. Just kind of eyeball the center of every end. So the short piece, that you flattened, the pieces that you put the kind of decorative hammering on, you gotta just kind of center punch each of those as we're gonna drill a hole in each of them. And I'm drilling everything 7/32 because I have a 7/32 rivet that I'm gonna be using here in a little while. But you basically want your screw holes, which are the ones on the decorative ends, you want the holes to be big enough that you can put whatever type of fastener you're going to use through it. And of course your rivet hole needs to match up with your rivet. At this point, I'm going to put the curves in these pieces, and I'm going to use this big swedge block over here to do it. Now, I'm not bothering getting it up on something to use. I don't use this thing a lot, but you don't have to have a swedge block. You can use a 55-gallon drum, a tank of some kind, not a tank with pressure in it. But you can use lots of different things to put a curve in here. But I have this, so this is what I'm using. Now when I'm doing this, I like to have that cool shaped end that we put into it by flattening the pipe, go face down, so it's what will be showing. I'll heat this in now. It doesn't take a lot to curve this material. Put this in. Give us our nice gentle curve we need there. We may have to do a little more to this. Just going to do this incrementally. That is cooled off, the easier to handle it is safely. That makes this easier to do, so I'm just quenching her down a little bit. Now, as you probably know, I like to eyeball things, so what I do is I start tapping this and picking up the other end of it until I get it what I feel looks right. Yeah. And then I will essentially do the same thing to this end. But we put a little foot on it, about like that. Hopefully you'll be able to see a little better this time. Take it over to the welding table and see how it sits. Okay, this side looks pretty good. This one needs a little more heat, so let's stick it in. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now let's look at our support arm. Go up here. So, yep, this needs quite a bit back. So, center of this. It'll be right there. Okay, I put most of this bend in the way I've already showed you on the anvil. And, look at that. Eyeball them strikes again. It is about perfect. I might heat this end up and knock it down just a hair, but then that is, yeah, that's what we're looking for. And now, oh yeah, that's perfect. Exactly where we want her. So now I'm going to let this cool off so I can wire brush it, and then we'll get our rivet in. Everything cleaned up here. And got my center marked. So now I'm going to drill that. Okay, now that's drilled. Let's get this thing over here. This ought to work. got my rivet. Should, ooh, just barely get through both. That's all right, it'll work. There, kind of eyeballer. Yeah, that rivet was not really long enough, but we gotta make it work. Here we go. So that's sitting flush. Yeah, could have done with a slightly longer rivet, but that is going to work fine. And this will be mounted on the wall like this. Our hook will hang on it like that, and we will be good to go. Now, a quick note about these hooks. The reason why I do this dull point instead of putting a finial or a rat tail scroll or something is so you can hang cast iron pots on it. Let me show you what I mean. This is a skillet I need to clean and reseason. But it's got these cast iron skillets have these small holes in them. So that's why I don't do anything real fancy on the end of the hook. Here's the thing around this basic style pot rack. The two pieces riveted or welded or bolted, however you want to connect them, and the hooks like this. You don't have to use this material. You can use flat stock. You can use pipe. You can use pipe that you don't flatten. You can use all kinds of things. It's just whatever you have. I have built pot racks out of farrier's rafts that I welded together and used that texture in there for the flats. I made one for a hunting camp where they wanted me to use T-post, old T-post from around the place. And that was a huge, huge rack. But it's only limited to your imagination. This is just a simple design that you can incorporate your ideas into, and you ought to have a lot of fun with it. So you can use it as a pot rack. You can use it as a herb drying rack. You can use it to hang tools on. You can put, I don't know. Your imagination is the limit here. Well, y'all, that's all there is to it. Let me know what kind of material you think you'd want to use for something like this. One thing to keep in mind, if you're building like the way that I built mine, I wasn't worried about where the centers were on studs. So this would work great for like a cabin or something with a solid board or piece of wood or something behind it to mount it to the wall. If you're building one for a frame house, you know, you need to have your attachment points on like 16-inch centers for the studs. That makes sense. So just when it actually works out, because 32, one in the middle. But I didn't work that math out. When I'm planning one that I'm going to carry around and try to sell to people, I always make sure it's on 16-inch centers, so normal people can buy it and attach it to the studs and not just pull chunks of their drywall out, because that's what people do. So anyway, I hope y'all got something out of this, and I hope everybody had a great new year, and y'all behave yourselves.